Hello, everyone, and welcome to another 8th Wall live learning session. This is our bi-weekly webinar series where we invite our developer community to come join us for an interactive session of tips and tricks related to WebAR development. So if this is your first time here, welcome. During these sessions, we're going to talk about what's new at 8th Wall. Then we'll dive into a relevant demo or topic. And finally, we open things up for live Q&A. So if you have any questions, please do enter them in the Zoom Q&A window. We'll get to them either during the session or at the end. The session is being recorded. It's going to be posted to YouTube and also emailed to everyone who's registered. And today, before we jump into our content for the webinar, a couple of quick introductions. Again, my name is Tony, and I'm the Director of Technical Operations here at 8th Wall. Once again, I'm joined by Rigel Benton. Rigel is our lead product designer. You've probably seen us on our developer Slack channel, but if you aren't already a member, I strongly suggest signing up. You can do it at 8thwall.com/Slack. There are now over 3,500 members. It's a really great place to join, to ask questions, interact with other 8th Wall developers, share what you've created with others, and just get general updates and feedback from the 8th Wall developer community. So between Rigel and myself, we've worked with thousands of WebAR developers, and really the goal here today is to pass along a couple of new tips and tricks that we've learned along the way. We definitely value your developer input. If you have any feedback or questions or feature requests, issues, please do reach out at any time. And with that, let's jump into a couple of quick updates regarding some new things from the 8th Wall team. And then I'm going to turn things over to Rigel, and he's going to go into the main topic of the day. And today that's WebAR Holograms. So a couple things, since our last live learning session, let me get rid of the slides and bring up a browser window here, is we've released a couple of new sample projects. So, based on the types of questions that, Rigel and myself and, Ian and others from the kind of developer relations teams here, when we see questions come up frequently, we will oftentimes put together a sample project just to show how this can be done for others in the future. So just a quick reminder, if you look at our documentation, we have links to different places where you can find these sample projects. Again, 8thwall.com/docs. There's a sample project section here on the left, and there are some links to the project library. This is where we have probably 40 or 50 sample projects. We've got another public workspace we call our playground. This is one where when questions come up on Slack, if we do a quick and dirty demo or example on how to solve that issue or that question, we oftentimes will throw it in the playground, and we also have one for FaceFX. So these can be accessed here. All of these have animated GIF previews. You can look at all the code. They have READMEs. You can clone them if you like what you're seeing into your workspace. And they all have live demos. So this is the project library. This is the playground. We have a FaceFX playground, and all those links can be found in that sample project section of the documentation. Today, I'm going to be talking specifically about two new sample projects. And those are the first two you see here in the list. So the first one is what we call A-frame glass materials. So we've been getting a lot of questions about, how do I make my 3D models look like glass? How do I give them transparency? So this is a great project to take a look at if you haven't done so already. If you're trying to do like, glass bottles or wine glasses or things like that. A lot of this has to do with how you generate the 3D model itself. And in this little sample project, we kind of have a before and an after. And the before, the wine glass is a 3D model that was downloaded over the internet. And then on the right, it was modified in Blender, and some of the material properties were edited. It was re-exported as a GLB, and now things look a lot better and it works. So if you're dealing with transparent objects, glass objects, I would definitely suggest taking a look at this sample project. And again, of course, you can look at all the code. It has an animated GIF. There is some information about, well, why might your model not be appearing properly, how to use Blender to create these glass-like looking materials. And it's got a lot of great tips and tricks. So this was created by our developer support engineer, Ian, who's on my team, and he's been a great resource creating these sample projects here. So definitely take a look at this one if you haven't already. Next is we've been getting a lot of questions about how do I create WebAR configurator type tools? So, maybe I have a product, maybe a car visualizer, or an action figure visualizer, and you want to be able to, just kind of swap things on the fly. So what this sample project does is it's pretty basic. It's just a single 3D model of a car, but it's got a little UI carousel down at the bottom where you can click these buttons and it will change the color of the car materials here. So this is another great one. You could even combine this with some of our other sample projects. We have some others where you can actually swap the different 3D models, change animation states. So this is just one more tool in your tool belt, so to speak, if you want to have a quick and easy way to kind of have like a configurator for a 3D model. So cars, products, things like that. And again, take a look at the README, and this gives you a lot of great information on that. And last but not least, the other update that I wanted to share with the community is that we're very excited to announce that our own VP of product, Tom Emmerich, has joined the IAB's AR board of directors. So the IAB, which stands for the Interactive Advertising Bureau, this is an organization that's comprised of over 650 leading media companies and brands and technology firms. And they're the ones responsible for selling and delivering and optimizing digital ad marketing campaigns. So this year, the IAB launched an AR board of directors within its Experience Center. So the AR board brings together experienced AR leaders. Of course, Tom has been an AR pioneer for over a decade. And the board is really here to help shape the future of AR in advertising and marketing. And Eighth Wall is going to help the IAB on its mission to unlock the value of AR for brands, really by focusing on buyer education, creative best practices, AR ad measurement standards, and things like that. So a lot of, we're excited to be part of this. And the board of directors here also includes members from companies like, major players like Google, Facebook, Niantic, Snap, TikTok, Unity, Verizon, Emoto, Digitas, and others. So definitely, we're really excited to be a member of the IAB AR board of directors, and very honored to have Tom serve on this board. So stay tuned for exciting updates and news in that area. With that, that's kind of what I wanted to share as far as what's new around Eighth Wall. And let me turn things over to Rigel, and he's going to take us through everything you want to know about WebAR and using holograms.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony. Hi, everybody. So holograms are really cool. We have had an integration with some form of hologram almost since the very beginning of Eighth Wall Web. And we've seen over the course of all of that time, many different commercial examples of holograms in market. And to me, as a former filmmaker, I've always been really interested in human performance and being able to replicate a performance in its most true form, in full 360, and being able to pick up all of the smallest details, and then bring that to an immersive experience is just really sci-fi. And it's especially cool that we can do this sort of over the web without any kind of app required. And there are several different technologies here. When I say hologram, I'm specifically referring to anything that can represent a human being, or it could be an animal or something like that, but it's typically organic in nature and in 3D in your space. Now there's like different types of holograms, and I'm going to go over a few of them right now. And often we'll also sort of use this interchangeably with volumetric video, which is another kind of cool space age term. So here I'm going to share my screen and start showing off some examples of this. Okay, can you see my screen? Great. So I wanted to begin with talking about Microsoft Mixed Reality Capture Studios, which was a really big partner early on and still is to this day, where they are true pioneers in this space. Having created their own pipeline for capturing people, and then now it extends to not just capturing and distributing right through their Holo-cap Holo Video Object Player through our web integration, but also, they have a network of other capture studios that leverage the core Microsoft technology that are scattered throughout the globe. So, here I'm going to kind of play this video as I'm talking. You can see here this would be an example of what it looks like whenever the subject is being captured. You have a bunch of depth cameras that surround an individual, or maybe even a small group of people in a green screen setting. So everything's really diffusely lit. So they get every single angle at a really high quality capture. And then they stitch all of this together until a 3D model that has a deformable mesh with a video texture applied to it. And what's really cool about this is that the way they do it makes it such that the video file, and I can kind of show you the structure of this when we get to the demo, but the video file carries with it the audio. So as it plays back, it's always synchronized. And then the animation is also baked into the model itself. And so what you end up getting is what's called a .hcap file. And that's the demo I'll show you later, is how to work with these, how to upload your own to 8th Wall and customize them. But it's really interesting stuff. And you can see here, so here's a few commercial examples. This one was with Spotify for Sam Smith. So it isn't just, as you'll see here, playing back, just simply the video file that's captured, but instead here, Pauster went above and beyond, and they created this really fascinating scene with other 3D models and interactions between the capture and the environment. Over here we got Burger King promotion in the UK, where Tiny Timpa is dancing on a Whopper because his new song was called Whopper. And I recorded this video up in the mountains. It's just like a really surreal thing I never thought I'd do. Let's record someone dancing on a hamburger. And then finally, here's Siduri from Rock Paper Reality, which is another really cool one where we have the host of a game show who's also the owner of the wine brand, sort of explaining the different kinds of wines in this really interactive way, where they're mixing the volumetric captures with the 3D models and animations. And then another really popular use case here is this is on the Finish Line website itself, where you can then view what these products from Nike would look like on different types of models and body types. So it's like a really practical way to understand what these products look like in 3D instead of just using product photos. So these are just a few of the HCAP examples. On our site, we have a blog that outlines step by step how to do what I'm about to show you later, which is uploading a hologram. So be sure to check out our blog. And then finally, I wanted to point you, before we move on to the other types of holograms, this is what we'll be using later as a starting point, which is found in the project library, and it is our MRCS hologram sample project. So apart from MRCS, we have other partners as well. So this one is called Arcturus, and they have a series of products. One is called Holo-Edit, which is really awesome. It's like After Effects for holograms, basically. And you can use their editor tool to manipulate and modify these holograms as if they were 3D models. I mean, I guess they are 3D models, but it's kind of somewhere between a 3D model and a video. So their software gives you affordances if you're sort of used to Maya or Premiere. So that's really exceptional. And then on our site, we have an integration with their Holostream product, which allows for adaptive bitrate streaming of holograms, which is a really cool advancement as well in this space, where these holograms can be very large in size. And depending on where you are in the world, maybe your internet connection isn't as quick as you would be on Wi-Fi. And so what their technology allows for is basically to detect how quickly the quality of your internet speed, and then it will adapt similar to like a YouTube video, sort of buffering or giving you the best possible outcome at any given time. It'll do this but for volumetric video. And so check out the Holostream volumetric video sample project, again, from our project library. It's on here. And then we have a blog post as well outlining all the ins and outs about their tech and how it applies to 8th wall projects. So check that out. And then finally, I wanted to show, this is a commercial example. I think that's what this is too, where they're showing off some clothing brands using their technology in 8th wall. So again, really cool. Fashion, I think, is going to be a really big use case for volumetric video, as we also saw music performance as well. Next is DepthKit. So DepthKit has been around a while as a really awesome, like scalable solution for capturing volumetric video at your house, in a studio, or even on the road. As many, as many filmmakers have used DepthKit as a way of creating really interesting examples of or extending their own work in myriads of ways. And so, we have a couple different official integrations with them in the playground. If you go and we have a DepthKit A-frame project, as well as a DepthKit 3JS project. And recently they just announced DepthKit Studio, which is really cool because it introduces not just what they had before, which was this kind of 2.5D half wrap style hologram, but now they've introduced full wrap holograms and live streaming. So this is something that you should definitely check out. It's very new. They only recently announced this, but yeah, if you're looking to do this, in your own place, and you don't need to fly someone out to a city, this is just a really scalable sort of solution, inexpensive solution for creating stuff. And it's one of the only ones I know of that can handle live streaming. So if that's also a requirement for your project, be sure to check them out. Apart from those three, there's also one that gets brought up frequently, and it's green screen video. So this would be something that you're shooting the subject against a flat wall, and there's no depth data that you're gathering from it, but you then use that source footage to create like a punch out version of them. And this has been actually really popular with brands as well, for a number of reasons. But one is that they can use footage they already had, maybe from a previous commercial, or it's much easier to get someone in any studio that has a green screen and some lighting than to have to send them to some place that's like a really specific setup, right? And so so this is also really appealing. And so here are a few different examples of this using celebrities. Again, this was during the VMAs, the MTV VMAs. We've got Lil Yachty and the King doing a whole performance. Over here, the Cali Red 19 Crimes Snoop Dogg experience. So he can pop out, and it's kind of like a magic 8-ball. He'll give you different advice depending on when you start it. And then up here in the UK is KSI has a whole music video that they did. And another cool thing about this is that it uses a lot less data because it's not carrying anything volumetric over, right? There's no mesh data. And so we've seen a lot of really cool examples for like really long form stuff. So like one was Real Estate, the indie band. They had an experience called Quarantine Tour right at the beginning of quarantine, and it was a full 30-minute concert that they played in the app, and because it was using just your typical video protocols, right, for streaming, HLS being one of them. You could play the whole concert. And so so in terms of the green screen video, we have on our project library one that's kind of mounted to a image target, and that's pretty common to do it this way. And then in our playground, we have another one, which is a variant of that allows you to place the hologram similar to what you're seeing here, using world tracking. And so be sure to check those out. And and these are great too, because you can go out and make your own green screen videos quite easily, and just like start running with it, right? Then the last one I wanted to talk about only briefly is phone-based capture. And so this is interesting because with companies like Scandi who have products like Scandi Pro and Hoxel. For a while now, you've been able to use like the True Depth camera on your iPhone to like capture 3D models and 3D scan them. And you can bring those in to eighth wall projects as well. And then, more recently, with the introduction of like the LiDAR scanner on the back, we've even seen, not just 3D scanning software being able to export different types of files, but also here's an example of Record 3D, which is a pretty cool app I found a few weeks ago, which is doing like point cloud video. And so here's like my cat, and I'm just like recording a volumetric video from my phone. And then that can then be played back. They have a 3JS integration. So, maybe we'll see a sample project or something, on the playground that leverages this. But definitely keep that up on the horizon, because I think going forward, as tools like this become more accessible, it'll be definitely something that eighth wall developers will be looking for, I'm sure. So those are the kind of the different types of holograms. I want to go all the way back to the beginning for the demo though, and show you how to make, a project that includes several things, right? I've taken the sample project and I've removed a lot of the elements that kind of make it what it is. And so that we're going to add that back together and then create a fully functional hologram project. So with that,
Rigel, really quick before you get too far, can you zoom in on your browser so the text is bigger for everybody?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Oops. Maybe something like that. Is that readable?
Maybe one bigger.
Cool. Almost big enough I won't need to wear my glasses. All right, so first things first, I'm going to scan my preview with my phone, and we'll see what we started with here. So what we should have is this prompt that asks us to tap to place a hologram, and then when I do, we should see the default hologram, which is the female presenter.hcap, and we can move around. It's all using world tracking. And, but you'll notice no shadows on the ground. I can't, use any kind of gestures to move her around or anything. And so we're going to add all that stuff right now. But first I wanted to do a quick overview of sort of the structure of this and what's going on. So within our head.html, we have, the typical A-frame and XR extras meta tags, which bring in whatever version of A-frame you've specified, as well as, our XR extras library, which handles a lot of things. And then the next area, though, that you'll notice is this Microsoft HCAP Player. So this is also pulling from RCDN, the version of Holo Video Object that's specified. And this is a really new version. So, this is already part of the sample project, and it introduces a few new checks for iOS with regards to HLS streaming that you'll definitely want to include. So just make sure that whenever you're using any of these projects going forward, you're at least at 1.3.2. The next one is a Dash library. So Dash is similar to HLS, which allows you to stream chunks of video content over time instead of requiring the entire hologram to load up front and then playing it back from there. So Dash is usually used on Android for Chrome, for instance, whereas like HLS is used within Safari on iOS. And whenever you export one of these HCAPs or you receive one of these HCAPs from a capture stage, you'll get like a folder that I'll show you here. So this is the character here.
We drink.
So in here, you'll see the content. So this is actually like everything that makes up a single HCAP asset bundle. And so, yes, we get the .hcap file. We also get an MPEG-4 and a few bin files. And these are really important because the bin files contain all the animation data. Here we have like the MPEG 4, which you can see is like sort of an unwrapped UV, but for a video. And so what's super interesting is like, you notice whenever it switches from like there, like the moment it jumps and all of it gets kind of moved again, that's an animation keyframe. So it's like it's moved beyond like a certain amount in the hologram that it needs to reshift its UV map to like accommodate that. So pretty fascinating stuff. But anyway, Dash and HLS, these folders are actually only used, these are only loaded when the Holo Video object script like detects that you're in an environment that requires that thing. So, you know, maybe this whole thing is like 100 megabytes. I mean, I don't think this file is, but let's just say for the sake of the argument, like this HCAP is 100 megabytes. You're not actually loading 100 megabytes. You're loading like, you know, 20 or maybe 5 and then 5 over time as these different segments come in. So this is important because it makes it possible to just simply start your experience. And even if it's like a 30-minute long, you know, HCAP, which is really long, right? And it's extremely long. You know, it's not like you have to wait for the whole thing to load before you can begin playback. And that's really important in web because we want people, we want users to be able to access that content immediately. And so this makes it possible to do so. So kind of going back to our app.js, this is of course where we import all of our components. In this case, we're importing the HCAP component, which we're then turning into a primitive, which is called Holo-cap. And in our body HTML, you'll see where we have that specified. So kind of the usual stuff here, right? Like we're declaring our A scene, and then inside our A scene, we've got a camera, our Holo-cap, and then the ground, right? The ground, of course, has the CanTap class, which we're saying is the only thing that our camera raycaster can interact with. And so that's what's being handled inside our HCAP.js component, which is allowing us to do that initial raycast to the ground to place the content. And of course, our text that says, you know, tap to place is being specified here. So you'll notice it's pretty simple, this Holo-cap component at its most bare minimum. And in fact, I mean, we don't even really need either of these things in order for it to work. You just need the source for wherever your HCAP file is. And as you saw, the HCAP file is actually a bunch of files, right? And it has but it also includes a .hcap file, and that's sort of the routing file. It's like, so when we specify, you know, assets female presenter.hcap, what we're really saying is like, you know, go to this asset bundle and then, you know, find the .hcap file. And that's how you'll know where to go to find all of the other files if you need them. And so, so that's why it's really important that you can't upload these files individually in the assets. You have to go through the upload process for an asset bundle. And that's what I'm going to show you next. So if we go ahead and click this plus button and then hit new asset bundle, HCAP file, we have this new window that appears. And inside this folder on my desktop, I have a soccer.hcap folder. And then really, I just need all the stuff inside of this folder. But I can also just upload the folder itself, and it's smart enough to unbundle everything. And so you'll notice here, we've got quite a few more bin files, you know, and boom, look at that. That was quick. So we can preview our folder, or our file, I mean, and we can actually name it whatever we want to. And you can even go through here and just click through, make sure that everything is what you expect it to be. So this soccer file doesn't have any sound. So, you know, we won't have to worry about that as opposed to the presenter one, which does. But I'm going to go ahead and create this bundle. And then now I have two HCAPs. I've got soccer and I've got my original one. I can then come in here and again, like click through, see what's going on, what kind of files it has. Some of these are not human readable, right? It's like they're binary files, but you know, our HCAP file is a great way to preview it. Cool. So so now it's really as easy to swap these out as just typing, soccer.hcap and getting it in there. So we should see load. He's really tiny, and we can't resize him yet, but there he is. So that's fun. All right, so next what I want to do is I want to bring in some shadows. So because what's really cool about these objects is they are still 3D objects. And when you start adding things like real-time shadows, it really brings a whole new level of immersion and realism to this. And so, so for that, I'm just going to go ahead and drop in a light. You'll probably notice that these are actually right now using basic materials. So they sort of don't respond to light, but they do cast shadows. And so what I'm doing now is I'm adding this light source, and then that does allow for shadow casting. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have it so that our ground can accept shadows. So I'm going to give it a new material called shader shadow, and give it kind of a, about 40% opacity. And so now whenever I reload the page, I should be able there we go. So boom, now you've got these real-time shadows that he's casting onto the ground, which is just really cool looking. We have the the light is actually positioned directly above his head. Now we can offset this if we want to, but it's really helpful sometimes when they're moving around a lot to kind of keep it in a position that, establishes a clear relationship between the character and the surface. And so that really helps with the illusion that they're really on the ground. And they're not floating above. And that's, again, another reason just like why we use shadows in general. So cool, so we've got our shadows. And next we want to add gestures. So this is really important too, because maybe you're going to record a video of the HCAP doing something like on a soccer field or, presenting on a stage maybe. And so, to do that, we want to be able to easily change where they are, change their direction that they're facing and all that. So what we're going to use is our Extra's gesture detector. So we're going to add that at the top of our A scene. And what this component does is it basically adds a bunch of event listeners to the scene that listen for tap events and swipe events and pinch and that sort of thing, multi-touch gestures. But they don't actually do anything by themselves. We need to have this in the scene so that it can listen for them. And then after that, what we're going to do is we're going to add to the model that we want to manipulate, which is, again, our Holo-cap component. We're going to add these three components. One is going to allow us to, if we hold our finger down, it will pick up the character and drag them around, just like in the manipulate example, if you've seen that one. And then we're also setting a pinch scale here of a maximum of 6. So we can't go too big, but we'll just see what this looks like. And then the other thing is we'll be able to rotate it with our fingers if we use 2 fingers and swipe side to side. So here, now we can scale them up, we can pinch to scale them down, we can rotate them around, and then almost most importantly, we can now drag them around the surface of the ground. And that's pretty cool. And while these are components that you can just drop in here one line, you can also modify any of these. They're all open source, available in our Extras library. And the README for each of these projects has a lot of information on like what you can do so in this project, we have all of this documented with how to handle the playback and state management of these HVOs. But we also, in most of these projects, we have like an overview which explains, what the different Extras components do. So always make sure to read the docs. Read the docs, yes, but also read the READMEs, because the READMEs sometimes have like really specific information about what you can do within the starter project. So now that we have our gestures, you'll notice that like whenever I grab them, I can pick them up and put them down. Part of how that works though is inside this HCAP component, we're doing a bunch of different things. We're most notably actually creating the HCAP element and then initiating playback from here. But we're also adding a cylinder primitive that's like invisible that you can't see, which we call the touch target. And that's actually sort of an oversized cylinder that allows us to raycast against the thing without needing to actually intersect that raycast with wherever his elbow is within the movement, which would be really frustrating. And so this is like fully customizable. And in fact, you can just turn on this show touch target parameter, and then you'll be able to see what this looks like. Now he's moving around quite a bit, so you probably want like a fairly large touch target. And so let's give it a second. The idea here is sound, obviously less movement. So here now we can see what we're actually hitting whenever we try to drag him. And this is right in the middle of all of his movement. So it's not like very difficult to miss. But we could also change the dimensions of the touch target with this touch target parameter here. I'm not going to get too deep into that because I think this is probably fine for the purposes of this, but I just wanted to highlight that as one of the things that we can change. The other thing we can change is the scale. So sometimes these come in at different scales, and you typically want to modify scale separate from the Holo-cap scale. And so we can sort of set a starting point for that through the scale attribute as part of the component. And then, by the way, this component, if you're not aware of how components relate to primitives, which are in this case the holo-cap, that's the tag. It basically just includes this HCAP component. So even though I'm talking about an HCAP component, we're actually defining that down here as an HCAP primitive, as the Holo-cap primitive. And here's where we remap everything. So when I'm referring to the HCAP URL in the component, that gets remapped to the source attribute on the primitive. And I think another thing I want to mention too about the source that I forgot to mention before is while we're referencing something that's part of the assets here, you can also just if you're hosting these HCAP files on your own servers, this is also where you would specify that URL directly. So cdn dot your server, and that handles the same way. So if you need to host it elsewhere, you can, and this is where you would specify it just like we're doing here locally. So so the next thing I wanted to cover quickly is a new thing that I added to the sample project the other day, which is playback controls. So I'm going to switch back over to the original, so the original HCAP here, because now I'll have sound. And then next, what I want to do is I'm going to add back a couple buttons that I took out previously. And these buttons are going to sit on top of our screen here next to the tap to place hologram. And then inside of our HCAP JS file, I'm going to uncomment this code that handles it. So what we're doing is we're actually adding a play pause functionality and a mute unmute functionality. And so, this has always been in here, but I thought recently it'd be helpful to include as part of the project because it's, while they are 3D files, they're also videos. And Microsoft's done a great job of, again, going back into this README, exposing a lot of really great functionality here that allow you to customize video playback in a bunch of different ways. And so some of the most basic ways are just simply allowing you to pause, play, rewind to the beginning, swap out the component. And so let's see here. Well, Well,
Nigel, there's a line where you set display equals block, search for block. It was in there. I think it was still commented out.
Ah, great. Thanks.
There you go. Yeah.
Good catch. I'm I knew it was something. Great. So yeah, so now we'll be able to see it. It was just hiding from us. And then this will be pretty straightforward. And again, you can follow the same pattern, and you'll get your own sort of playback controls, however you want to implement that. I wanted to also mention, great, so now we can see that, cool. And then you can see I can pause it now, and she's kind of frozen. I can also mute or unmute her, though I don't have the audio playing through, so, but you get the idea. It could be a really nice sort of subtle addition. One thing I want to add, though, is whenever you tap to place at the beginning, that initial click event where you add it allows, or it permits iOS for just like playing back audio. So it's sort of like two birds with one stone, where not only are you placing the hologram, but you're actually sort of enabling the scene to play back audio. So you'll always want to have that in there. An alternative to this is if you want it to be auto-placed, like let's say you're appending this to an image target. So the user has just pointed their phone at an image target and it appears, but they haven't actually clicked on anything yet. That would be a good example of like when you would want maybe to have it muted by default, and then if they wanted to start playing back the audio, they would tap that unmute button. Boom, that's the click event. It reconfigures everything, and you can hear the hologram again. So that's like an example of why you'd want to do that. The last thing I wanted to show everyone before we wrap up here is pretty fun. So this would be an instance where you'll notice that like I mentioned before, this is a basic material, so or a flat shader, if you can call it like that. So I could turn all the lights off in the scene, and you'd still be able to see the hologram just as well, like we did at the very beginning. But if you change the material of the hologram, and the hologram has normals, for instance, it actually allows you to do things like relighting, or you could even create a custom shader to apply to the hologram to do really cool effects. And so I have an example of this as well I want to show off. So this one, the two holograms that I've shown off so far don't have normals, and that actually saves a lot on file size. But I have one of Kevin Straw, our Director of Business Development, and I've gone ahead and changed some lighting parameters to do a pretty cool effect. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I added him, and you saw how I did that with that CDN link here. So he's not even in my project, but we're going to point to him externally. And then inside my HCAP.js file, I'm going to go to the part where it says this HVO is new Holo Video Object 3.js. This is where we actually create the object in the scene. And in here, I've got like, I'm setting some sort of initial positioning. I can grab the material from the mesh that's being constructed, and I can apply a new material to it that still takes the map, so the texture from the video. And so instead of using the basic material, which is what it is by default, I've now gone ahead and added the standard material, which is a PBR material, and can respond to light. And the last thing we need to do is change some of our lighting in their scene to make it look really cool. So I already have a couple lights that I've prepared ahead of time. We're just going to go ahead and replace the light source that I had in there before, and save and build. Oops, right. One more time. Okay, cool. So now we've got Kevin in my room, and you can see I've got these 2 point lights that are positioned near him. And you can see as he moves around them, they reflect off of him in pretty interesting ways. And it's all happening in real time. So this is just a really cool example of like reminding everyone that, this is very much a 3D model. And as a 3D model, you can do whatever you want with it at runtime. And so you can do some really creative stuff like this. So anyway, that's sort of, what I've got with regards to holograms. So if you have any questions, be sure to ask them at the Q&A. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Great job, Rigel. Thanks so much. A lot of great information. We do actually have a handful of questions. So let's see, let's just start going through the list here. So the first question we have is about HCAP files, and one of these can be viewable on iPhone 12s. And I guess if we step back a little bit, what happened is actually in iOS 14, iOS Safari, iOS 14 was released with a bug where basically HLS video playback was just broken in WebGL across all devices. So because of that, and that was not something that we could control, Microsoft on the playback side or 8th Wall on the AR side could, really fix ourselves. That needed to be fixed in the browser itself. We basically had some workarounds where on those impacted devices, instead of playing the HLS video, it would fall back and it would play that monolithic MP4 video that you saw in the asset. Well, things got better in iOS 14.2. In iOS 14.2, Apple fixed the HLS streaming issue on pretty much all devices except for the iPhone 12 series. So as of 14.2, non-12s would stream the video texture as an HLS video, and the 12s would still fall back. They would still work, but it would use the MP4 video. Well, thankfully, I want to say in the iOS 14.6, which I think was either just released or just about to be released, that HLS bug has been fixed. So now iPhone 12s will stream HLS video as well. They won't have to fall back to MP4. I don't know, Rigel, if there's anything else you want to add or correct me on that.
I'll share just my screen again real quickly.
Yeah.
I have a project here that can kind of show how this behavior works now. So with the fixes. So, we've been in contact with Microsoft about this, and that's part of the fix that's in 1.3.2 for Holo Video. And so here, I'll kind of show you, on two different phones. So the one over here with where it says Stream HLS, this is actually the phone I was just showing you. It's running 14.6 on an iPhone XR, which was never affected by this bug, right? And then the phone I'm holding in my hand that I just scanned this in is an iPhone 12 Pro Max, which is on 14.5. And so, 14.5. 14.5, of course, doesn't have the fix in, like Tony said, but you'll also notice that it's falling back to the MP4 stream. So, without needing to add any app level logic, thanks to Microsoft, right now, if you're using the latest version of Holo Video Object, it doesn't matter which device you're using, you're always going to get something that runs. So, the sample project works with every phone right now. There's no caveats. The only thing is that iOS won't be able to use HLS until the 14.6. Sorry, iPhone 12 devices won't be able to use HLS until 14.6 is publicly available. Right. Here we go.
But the good news is that these holograms work on all devices. It's just until some of these fixes were released, it might not be streaming the video asset in the most optimized way, but it still works. So yeah, great. Thanks, Rigel. Let's see, another question about, is additional equipment needed to create content? Rigel, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, so, I covered a few different types, right, at the beginning. If we're talking about what I was showing off in the demo, then yes, you would need to go to a capture stage, and there are several actually. So you have in San Francisco, Microsoft. That's like their main one that they run. And if you have any talent in San Francisco, then you can go up there and have a conversation with them about it. In LA, you have MetaStage. In London, Dimension Studios. There's new ones in Washington, DC now called Avatar Dimension. And in Seoul, there's one called Jump Studios. So if you're, there's quite a large map there of Microsoft licensed capture stages. And then, there's other partners and stuff too, like, I mentioned DepthKit, that's like something that you would do yourself. Like you would order some Kinect cameras and then you would use their software to capture it. And then Holostream, Arcturus, that software that you use with the captures that you already have from the capture stages that I mentioned before. It's sort of like an alternative to using the HCAP Holo Video Object JS file.
And Arcturus and their Holostream, they actually provide support for lots of different types of volumetric video assets, so not just MRCS and some of these others. So they support a whole handful of different types of capture studios. Okay, great. So another question is, does APL support other volumetric formats as well, in addition to MRCS or Arcturus?
Yeah, so we're working with a number of different partners. We have commercial examples of Omnivore and Teta V, as well as other. I want to say, well, yeah, I mean, HoloMe is another one, or also known as Beam, that uses the kind of the green screen video technique I was describing earlier. But yeah, there's a lot of like, I can put it another way. If the capture solution you're looking for has some way of playing back the content in WebGL, particularly if they have something like a Three.js integration, it becomes very easy for you to integrate yourself. And if you do come across something like that, like, please let us know, and then we can put together, we can work with them to put together a sample project to make it easier going forward for other people to access that.
Awesome, great, thanks, Rachel. Another question: where do I put the HCAP file if I'm not using Cloud Editor?
So that would be an example where you would host it yourself, and then you would reference that your self-hosted HCAP file from the source parameter in your Holo-cap primitive, like I was showing off earlier.
Perfect. Looks like final question we have is, what is the best cost-effective volumetric video options? What's the average cost for volumetric video hologram with someone like Arcturus?
I don't know, Tony, if you have like.
Yeah, we generally don't get involved in the licensing of the volumetric assets. That would be something you would work out between yourself and Microsoft or Arcturus. And I know there's different kind of variables there. There's how many clips are they creating for you? What's the duration? And yeah, I don't have any specifics or can quote any prices there, but another big factor with the volumetric capture is really location, as Rigel mentioned, right? One of the biggest hurdles here is you have to get somebody to one of these physical capture studios. And if you can do that, that's amazing. If not, you could always look at a more cost-effective option, which is like a green screen video that you could, record pretty much anywhere, using standard hardware. So, a lot of it really comes down to what type of experience do I want to create? What's the budget that I've got? Where am I located, or where's the talent located? And then, where would the nearest capture studio be? Or, do I fall back to a green screen video? So you kind of have to weigh all those different, different factors when deciding, which option is right for you. So.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, we have just a few minutes left in our session here today. So if there are any final questions, please do get them into the Q&A window inside Zoom. Otherwise, we'll be wrapping things up here in just a moment. Let me share out the final slide here and share my screen. Okay, so awesome. Oops, let's go back to the final slide here. So with that, thanks again for joining another live learning session. Again, if you haven't already joined our developer Slack, please do go to eighthwall.com/Slack. As I mentioned earlier, there are over 3,500 people, and it's a great place to be and interact with other developers and ask questions. And also definitely follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @theeighthwall. So with that, thanks again for your time and attendance here today. We look forward to seeing you on the next live learning session, and we hope everyone has a great day. Thanks again.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Bye.